Eline Mugaas is an artist based in Oslo, Norway. She's working primarily with images and installation. As you all know, Eline just won, we could have an applause for that, she just won the Loic Skive Prize 2 weeks ago. Whoa! Which is the largest art prize funded by MBK, actually. So it's a gift from Norwegian artist to a Norwegian artist. She has also, she made a brilliant show called Hold stenhårt fast på greia di. Hold rock hard onto your thing, you could say, which means that it was this show which was made in 2013. Yeah, with primarily female and feministic art, which had been left out of art history in Norway. And it actually made Norwegian art history consequently being rewritten. It changed Norwegian art history afterwards. And also some of these artists' work from the 60s until, you can talk about that, they were, they had never been bought in. So it was a large show that she made together with Elise Storsveen, where these pieces, none of them were bought into the museums, and afterwards they have been bought in by several museums. Also, after the whole Stenhårt fast på greia, she has been working with Siri Aurdal, as most of you know that had a large exhibition here, but also at the Venice Biennale, and she is now bought in by with a large piece at the new museum here in Oslo. So, welcome to Eline. She wants to start off with a movie, and then she'll give us a presentation.
Yeah. Thank you. I have to just correct that I co-curated that show together with Elise Storsveen and Kunsthøgskolen. Yes. So I'm going to start with a 1-minute film.
That's why we give assignment. So that you can master, to some degree, any degree, a spectrum of knowledge, how to make it, what to make it out of, and what procedure to use. As for why we should want to make it, this is called why we went to art school instead of carpentry school. Knowing why you want to make something is a big deal. At the end of 4 years of art school, we hope you will have a definitive take on that. If not, go to work.
So, that was one of my teachers in art school. Oh, let's hope now that I can do this right. This is just the index of chapters of a book I picked up from my bedside the other night, and of George Perec, and reading over the chapters, which reads first chapter, the page, the next one, the bed, then the bedroom, the apartment building, the street, the city, the neighborhood, the town, the country, the countries, Europe, the old continent, the new continent, the world, space. It sort of reminded me of like one of the first times writing down my name, learning to write, and writing my address, and then continuing out all the ways to go to the universe, and then this sense that everything is connected. And sort of coming on to the question about what I learned in art school, I thought, that's what I learned in art school. Everything is connected. Okay. We learned in the art. I went to an art school in New York City called the Cooper Union. I started there in 1989, and I had just grown up in Oslo, and I was fairly new in America. So for me, this was quite a large change and opening my eyes to a lot of different things. So what we learned very much was how to discuss a work in a space, and how that work was connected, and the conversation about the object that we were discussing always was discussed in relation to this space, to the room. And in this room was a group of people, and they were also included in that discussion. And this room, again, was in a building. an institution, an art school. So that institution was part of that discussion about that work. And this institution was in a city, smack in the middle of a city, with lots of people from all over the world, where things happened, where there were big crises going on. And this city and all these things that these people were going through was also part of that discussion. Of course, part of the work was sort of filtering out what we were not going to discuss that day, but it was always present in the room that everything had to be discussed together. This picture here is one of the earliest works I have images of from that I produced in school in the foundation year, because we started out with kind of a traditionally very Bauhaus-inspired foundation year. I'll speak mostly about what we did in what was called three-dimensional design. It's kind of the beginning of sculpture class. The first semester we were working mostly with sort of practical, learning how to build the elementary things that would help us being able to build sculptures later, or anything. And in the second semester we worked with more sort of art-concerned ideas, like what is the difference between found material and found object? What is a site-specific, and so on and so forth. But also around this time, all our classes are mandatory, and we're also doing photography. And photography was very important at the time because we didn't have any digital medium. So the way that you were both how you could actually show your work to other people was by showing people slides, and slides were very difficult to make. But also through learning to do photography, we also came an exercise in looking at your own work, and so started this type of layering of pictures and work, and how do you actually show something? How do you communicate through a picture? How do you actually show someone what you're looking at when you are isolating? How much are you isolated? What does it mean when somebody steps into the space and walks up to it? How big is something? How do you actually communicate how big something is in a photograph? Also an important thing, of course, was that only a subway stop away from school was the then gallery district in New York, Soho. And in Soho, in the galleries, we were able to also look at a lot of the art that at the time was new for me. I was very interested. It was the first time I saw the art of the minimalist and the American 60s generation, which I found very fascinating, and I would struggle to understand, and which we were trying to, you can actually see. I looked at a lot of Eva Hess, we looked at a lot of Carl Andre, we looked at all of these different Solovit. And then also, part of the discussion in school was, of course, a lot on presentation. So this is one of a small piece that was made, I think, the first year, that I struggled a lot with how to present, and that was never really presented as a sculpture in sculpture class, because I wasn't able to figure out how to present it. It's a little bra cut out of that cardboard that green apples comes in the store, for them not to bang up against each other and get like the brown spots. So I cut this little bra out, and I knew that if I had just pinned it up on the wall, there would be a whole 4-hour talk about if the nails were like adequate, or how, because we would go into these really lengthy discussions around pedestals, different type of nails, frames, no frames. So then the solution at some point came through the photography class, asking my classmates to pose with them. At this time, we also reading essays. I think here, I'm pretty sure here I've already read the Laura Mulvey essay, The Visual Pleasure of Narrative Cinema, which introduced me to the notion of the male gaze, where I, for the first time, understood how a sort of patriarchal structure also shaped how I looked at the world. This is also the same year that Judith Butler's Gender Troubles came out, and Camille Paglia's Sexual Persona. And you can sort of see how it's starting to entering into how I'm thinking. This is, again, a new work as sort of photography is taking over, trying to figure out how these things interact and how I can work, how found material carry meaning, and how this translates back and forth between these layers of photography and the object in itself. So through photography class, we go also through the sort of a more traditional way of sort of looking at what is a portrait. But I also thought that it was interesting to look at this and to talk about the importance of the student body, to understand the way that in the States we were quite young starting out school. I came in there at 19. I was 2 years older than my classmate. They were mostly 17. So it was a very structured school. We were there in the morning and we were there to midnight, 7 days a week. And we had classes from early in the morning to late in the evening, and we basically went home to sleep, but we ate together, spoke together, hang out together, made homework together, were in the shop together, were in class together. And we became each other's sparring partners on many different levels. We were each other's sort of harshest critics. We were each other's best supports. We were each other's models when we needed to do new drawings or take photographs or fulfill some assignments. We were each other's lovers and dance partners. But also, we were also the ones that helped each other sort of open up and get in language about how to speak about art together. And this understanding each other as each other's colleagues it's a very important thing, I think, that our teachers were helping us doing. Slowly moving out of also the school building and into the apartments we are living, looking at other students. So here we are dancing in one of the apartments. And then through the photography class, one of the most important things I also think that as photographers were brought in and spoke about their work was also, it was starting to move for me from this photography as purely a form of documenting other work to actually becoming a tool to learn how to see the world and to also identify a very specific point of view, like from where you see and what you see, and also about this being specific to where you see from. So through the introduction to photographers like Nan Goldin, but also like Gary Winograd and the street photography tradition in America, where always there was a very emphasis put on what they would say, the little man in the street. Who is the man in the street? And that was something that I took with me, this point of view, where I actually see from. That all my photographs, you can identify where I'm actually standing. So now I'm jumping 30 years forward. In 2016, I published a book called Siri Aurdal by Eline Mugaas. This was a compilation of scans of photographs of fragments that was left over from Siri Aurdal's oeuvre. I had helped her move her studio, and I had 7 boxes in my studio of only these fragments that was left. She had been working with this monumental sculpture, but at the time there was no sculptures left. And all we had was these little pieces. None of them were in any particular order, and I had to kind of go back and use all my knowledge, all I had learned through art history, through working with art and through talking to other artists, to try to piece together her thoughts and how these kind of reminiscences could say something about the sculptures that had been. So some of them you see my photographs next of her pieces. So this really sort of layering of sketches, notes, and photographs of sketches and notes. So I'm trying really hard here to follow how she goes from some kind of, sometimes even figurative drawings, and how the thoughts are moving through all these different stages. Siri went to the Arts and Crafts School here in Oslo in the end of the 50s, and later at the Art Academy, and was very much brought up in a Bauhaus tradition. And you can kind of see this, like the way that she moves through her thought process and the study of these. I think are done with the eraser on the back of a pencil in her notebooks. Again, as here it's a photograph of Sidi holding up one of the models that are still left. But with most of the things found in her studio, nothing was quite. Things were stacked on top of each other, but were never glued, or never quite finished, so it's always her hands coming in there, having to support them to be able to show you what she was thinking. Here's the four pages. So up in the corner here is from the big exhibition that was here in 1969 of her sculptures. This is the audience graffitiing on the sculptures at the opening. On the bottom is photocopies of the exhibition that she had kept drawing on many years after the sculptures had disappeared. And in the bottom corner is a piece that was set up in a school, an elementary school here in Oslo, and that was there for 24 years, but were taken down in the 90s. This is the first image that I ever saw of Sidi's work. And I found this image when I was doing research for this show on feminism and art in Norway that Lotte mentioned earlier. So this is in 2012. And I came across this image in a text on a generation. I knew most of the artists in that text, so it's quite famous, the Mugaas group, Ville Bolstøen, Morten Krogh, and many, many others. But this image gave me a huge shock when I saw it, because I immediately recognized it as an incredibly important piece of its time, because the text underneath said, a woman's name, Siri Aurdal. It said that it was an exhibition from 1969 at Kunsthøgskolen. I had never really heard about Siri. I had never heard about this piece. And that really sort of shook me. So I started looking for anybody that could tell me anything about Siri. Because there was suddenly a million questions here. Like, how come I had never heard about it? Did I misread this image? Was it not what I thought I saw? Was this something that happened so quickly and come down so quickly that no one had seen it? Why wasn't this be spoken about? If this was as big as it looks like in this image, how could something this big just disappear in a generation? So after asking around and calling around, I was able to actually find Sidi through I was able to call her. She was actually alive, and we were able to sort of strike up a phone relationship, and we started this possibility for working for this group show. The big sculptural work were way big to even tackle, so we ended up looking at this one piece here. You see from 1968, a plexiglass piece, mobile, and we worked from a very few amount of slides. It turned out, since none of this actually existed anymore, we had to look for them. We tried to make it up again, both by drawing from the images, but also in conversation with Sidi, how. And this also, through this process, I'm also realizing that she's working through these principles, as was mentioned before, of Albers, right? You buy a sheet of plexiglass, you apply a certain, very few gestures to it, a certain type of cuts, a certain type of wave cut and a circular cut or an elliptical cut. You use every single piece, and then you build out this room. So on the far end there, you see the piece that was shown in 2013. Now, quite quickly, I'm going to go through and just show you, because here, in 2016, when we were also publishing this book, we were also able to, we got the show at Kunsthøgskolen, and we were able to get the funds to start the research to see if we can build up again these sculptures. So very quickly, so we did this in here 2016. Then it was moved out in the different forms in the park in the fall the same year. Then CD designs a new composition for the piece for Venice in 2017. Here's another new composition in Malmö Kunsthall, 2018. We also did the larger piece there of the plexiglass piece, now for 300 square meter. And a brand new piece, also 300 square meter new plexiglass piece. So at the same time that we did, when she did this Malmö show, we were invited to the Museum of the Sketches in Lund to do a show on the conversation over the book. So here I put together a show with collages made of the photographs of the sculptures, models and notes of CDs, and photographs, my photographs or her maquettes. So I'm going very quickly through there. And here is me and CD working on the new composition for the new National Museum. So for the past year, I got this possibility to work for the show in Trondheim, and given a good economy for the show, I was able to sort of just close the door to my studio and try to think about what had happened through these 6-7 years of working so closely with CD's work, and just thinking about what it meant to stand up through a whole life as an artist, what it means and what happens when something goes quiet. What do you need as an artist to be able to carry it through, to carry the weight of what you need of support, and what my role had been in working with her the last couple of years. And I guess that was sort of the word I came up with, that I had been her support structure. And sort of thinking about this, I started again working with a lot of these things that we had talked about around both presenting work, how to make work as in school. I started thinking about the pedestals, the shelves, the different objects that actually is needed for something else to be seen. I took the cardboard boxes that the books that I did on CD had come in from the printer and started moving them around. And then the bookshelves were actually made out of these boxes. I also worked with a series of videos of me and other people lifting these boxes, then filled of books, so they're heavy, trying to balance the boxes and moving around with them. So you see that? Yes. That's the last picture. That's it.